Hello everyone! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be finally bringing you the What Would Lover Fest Have Looked Like video, the final video in my What Would X album tour look like. And honestly, this feels like probably the most anticipated album tour video of them all. And because it was so highly requested, I wanted to make sure that we do something really special as kind of a way to cap off this era. If you haven't watched the original What Would the Tortured Poets Department tour have looked like, definitely start there because that'll give you a whole breakdown of what we're kind of going to be working with today. Today's video obviously is going to be on Loverfest, the tour or festival tour that was meant to be happening to promote the album Lover, but because of a bunch of different things, one of them being COVID, we never got this festival, and this is the most we ever knew about one of these tours that we are speculating upon in these videos. You know, there is kind of a lot of actual information that we're able to pull from for this video. So what I would like to do today is go back in time and have a look at what we actually know about Loverfest and educate us together, and then from there use what we know to make the most likely Lover set list for a Lover tour. Okay, does that sound interesting to all of you? So yes, if you haven't watched What the Tortured Poets Department tour would look like video, definitely start there for an explanation of how we got to our formula. So before we jump into the juiciness that is Loverfest, I would like to start off with the only concert to fans that Taylor ever did for this album. There are two concerts in particular that I can think of that I think about with regard to the promotion of Lover, and that is the NPR Tiny Desk concert and the City of Lover one night only show in Paris, which was just such a spectacle in itself. So I'd like to start there, see the timeline of events. The City of Lover show was performed 2 weeks after the release of the Lover album in 2019. And if you aren't familiar with what City of Lover is, I'm sure you've seen the beautiful heart-shaped vinyl records to commemorate the live versions of these songs that were performed. So that's the show that this is for. What's so interesting about this concert to me is that all of the seats in this 2,000 person capacity venue, all of the tickets were either raffled off or they were selected from people who purchased the album, which is such a fun idea. So it essentially means that the only way that you are going to maybe be going to this show was if you were already a fan enough to have purchase the album. Isn't that so lovely? I think that because of the size of the venue, the fact that it was only one night, the way that it was all kind of orchestrated, it feels very much like a secret session to me in terms of the like once in a lifetime nature of this show. The set list included 16 songs, 8 songs from Lover and 8 songs from other albums. So we've got already a 50-50 split just to have mulling over in our brains, right? The setlist for City of Lover included Me, Blank Space, I Knew You Were Trouble, The Archer, Love Story, Delicate. And then after Delicate was performed, Taylor explained that with Lover, every single song that she wrote for the album was either written solely on guitar or piano, kind of a one instrument only song. And in a way to kind of give a unique performance of a few of the songs in this set list, she wanted to play them as she wrote them, which I think is so fun. She also did this on the NPR Tiny Desk, but imagine having been there in the L'Olympia, and experiencing this for the first time. The 6 songs that she performed with the instrument that the song was kind of made on was Death by a Thousand Cuts, Cornelia Street, The Man, Red, All Too Well, and Daylight. And then she finished the show off with Style, You Need to Calm Down, Lover, and Shake It Off. The City of Lover was about a 1-hour show and there was no encore. It was only the songs that she had on the official set list for this show. There was only one show, so really if there was an encore, it would have just been an encore for one show. And how can you really say what's an encore and what's on the regular set list? And then after the events of, 2020 happened, as a kind of this is all that we got going on for Lover, they actually released the televised version, which was just the 8 Lover songs that were performed. And I believe that the reason that the 8 songs that were non-Lover songs were not included in that televised version was because of the Masters dispute, which, you know, had been going on before Lover came out, but certainly as Lover was coming out and in preparation for Taylor to be releasing the Taylor's versions of each of the albums. Now that we've kind of got a basis for the first performance, really, of the Lover album, let's move on to what was planned for Lover, that being the Lover Fest tour. Lover Fest was originally announced on September 17th, 2019, and it was said to be a festival tour, which was completely different to anything that Taylor had ever done before. Every album had been promoted, make the album, bring out a tour for that album, make the album, bring out a tour for that album, as you would expect for each album, right? She'd said a number of times in interviews that she doesn't like doing the same thing over and over, and she likes to keep people guessing. So I do think that while this was a really ambitious thing to want to do, it kind of makes sense that Taylor didn't want to just keep following in those same footsteps. She wants to like stretch her wings and really flex what she is able to do, especially now that she's free from Big Machine Records. She's got her own company that she is using to promote things. It makes sense that she would be kind of doing things on a bigger scale now that she can control what's going on a little bit more. Taylor's announcement tweet reads, "The Lover album is open fields, sunsets, and summer. I want to perform in a way that feels authentic. I want to go to some places I haven't been and play festivals. Where we didn't have festivals, we've made some. Introducing Lover Fest East and West." TaylorSwift.com. So unlike her previous tours, Loverfest focused on festivals. The tweet was posted with some initial dates, 8 of them being for pre-existing festivals in different parts of the world, and then 4 of the dates on that tour were for US shows, 2 in California and 2 in Massachusetts. Interestingly, the US shows were marketed as Loverfest, West and East, but they were in stadiums. They were not out in an open field, kind of like you would expect for regular festivals, you know, Coachella, Austin City Limits, all of those kind of festivals, you expect them to be out open grassy field. These ones were in enclosed stadiums. So for the LA shows, I believe it was SoFi Stadium, and the Massachusetts one was Gillette Stadium. Kind of felt a little bit more like a regular schmegular concert, for lack of a better term, which I'd say is our first red flag. Later, she released some additional dates. There was another US date that was announced, and that was the Capital One Jam Fest, which is in Atlanta. And I believe it was 2 months before the initial first date that she had already released. So I believe this one was in April. And then there was like a 2-month wait until June when her first Europe show was going to be in Belgium. And then later, she also announced that she would be headlining Glastonbury 2020 with Kendrick Lamar and Paul McCartney as some other kind of like big names. I will say, before this was announced, I never, ever would have thought Taylor would perform at festivals like you imagine Chapel Roan, Sabrina Carpenter, Beyonce. It's just not something that I envision with Taylor. I know that Taylor in her like early career performed at festivals, but like kind of littler festivals. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe she's ever performed at a like festival like Coachella, for example, before. She's certainly too big to do it now. But in total, the Loverfest tour was going to have 17 stops, which is far lower than any other tour that she had ever promoted before, and certainly the least amount of US shows that she'd ever done before. Now, the reason for this largely is because she wanted to be closer to home. At that point, as far as I understand and as far as we know from the Lover album itself, her mum had been struggling with cancer, and she didn't want to be away in case anything went wrong, in case she needed to be there for her mum. She wanted to be able to spend as much time as she could with her. She wanted to keep the promotion of Lover kind of smaller, but still do something exciting. I think she knew that she was going to have less shows, so she wanted to do something quite big. She wanted to make quite a spectacle for this album to compensate for it. With all of these things that had been announced, her performing at a lot of these festivals, there was not a lot of information about each of those US shows that were listed as Loverfest West and Loverfest East. Notably, once those final dates had kind of been promoted, the Loverfest East and West had been re-promoted as Taylor Swift Loverfest to Taylor Swift and Friends Loverfest. I think originally people assumed that she was going to play a regular set list amount of songs. So, you know, typically for a festival that'd be around an hour and a half as a full set list, which I would argue is pretty similar to a regular concert, certainly not the Eras tour, but you know, for regular artists in general, it's normally around an hour and a half to 2 hours as the regular kind of set list. But with Loverfest East and West, even though they had been marketed as a festival, we didn't really know what any of that meant. And who was the And Friends? And how much of the And Friends was going to be part of this festival? Could it have meant that she was going to have more acts before her show? Kind of like an actual festival where, you know, maybe it starts midday and it goes up to her playing in the evening. Or was it more reminiscent of a regular tour where she had maybe one or two opening acts and then she would be on, but it was just branded as a festival? Maybe it was going to be reminiscent of the 1989 tour where she would perform with opening acts in different places. Was it going to be the same opening acts in each places, or was it going to be different based on the location? Was it going to be the scale of a traditional festival, Coachella, Glastonbury, whatever, but it was going to be Taylor Swift branded, you know, Taylor and her team making it, and then all these different like vendors and people in a marketplace all selling things that kind of are Taylor Swift merch or Loverfest related, or, you know, things like that, where it was kind of more Taylor centric of a festival. We will never get proper answers to this, and sometimes it does keep me up at night, but it is so mysterious. We really don't know. And you know what? Swifties are creative, and the cogs, they keep turning. And we keep inventing new things that could have been, because we just never got any information about this tour. I don't think that this is very likely, but we don't know. We never knew if Loverfest East and West were going to be the same lineup, same configuration of performances, or if it was going to be completely unique shows. So people didn't know, should they buy tickets one to East and West even though they were so expensive? Because we don't know if they were going to be the same or if they were going to be completely unique shows. You know... Occam's razor, the likelihood of it being something completely different is very unlikely. The most simplest answer tends to be the correct one. In the grand scheme of things, almost certainly they would have ended up being the same show, just moved east and west. But you never know. With kind of that part in mind, certainly, when it comes to making our own set list, I think it's going to be important for us to pretend that this is all going to be the same kind of lineup. Even her shows at the different festivals, maybe they would have one or two songs swapped out, but for our purposes, we're going to make one set list to rule them all. This is the set list if she was going on a tour, like a regular tour, but it just happens to be performed at festivals. I think that's the way that we're going to have to approach it. Like, let's say we made a Loverfest East and a Loverfest West set list. I think this video could end up being like 4 hours long. I just don't have the time to edit that. The other interesting thing about the Loverfest East and West shows was the Loverfest West show in particular was going to be performed at SoFi Stadium, which, as I understand it, wasn't even completed by the time it was being promoted for this show. So no one knew what the inside of the stadium looked like or knew kind of the capabilities of what could be done at the stadium. I know that it was eventually finished in like September or August of 2020, and likely there was delays because of COVID itself, and maybe it would have been ready by the time the Loverfest shows were, but it certainly was going to be one of the first shows in SoFi Stadium. So that also presents a little bit of a, you know, that presents a few questions to me personally. Like I mentioned earlier, with so many people starting to purchase tickets for these shows that hadn't really fully been disclosed, people didn't know what they were actually spending money on. If each of the shows were going to be different, they didn't know if it was going to later have dates released in the following year. If, say, you were in Colorado and you wanted to go to one of these shows, you're going to be spending quite a lot of money traveling to either California or Massachusetts, quite far away from you, when, hey, could there be a show in the next year? Is it worth spending all that money to travel and find somewhere to stay? There's all these like logistic things that people just didn't know about leading up to it. Ultimately, a month before the first show was set to happen in Atlanta, a little thing called COVID happened, and it put a stop to all of everything that was going on. Initially, the concert was postponed. They said that they were going to pick it up, or hopefully pick it up, once COVID had settled down. Obviously, it took longer than a year to settle down, especially in America, especially because certain people decided that COVID wasn't a big deal, and hey, I'll let people die, it doesn't even matter. It's just a flu, guys, it's just a flu. Well, it wasn't just a flu, was it? And with the postponing of kind of these dates, and then of course, Taylor bringing out Folklore, and then later on Evermore, the likelihood of Loverfest ever happening, you know, grew less and less as time went on, because after these 2 albums had been released, doesn't it feel a little bit odd now to be going back to an album that was 2 albums ago to promote that one? It just seemed like it was never going to happen. And honestly, Taylor brought out so much stuff in 2020. It kind of felt like as compensation for all of the drama of Loverfest, which, yeah, I'm glad that she brought that out in the end. Not that she necessarily needed to. I can see how it just wasn't going to work out. Despite so many unanswered questions, we do actually have some kind of more confirmed things about Loverfest. Thank God. We do have a few mock-ups of what the stage would have looked like. We have an early mock-up that kind of looks a little bit like the 1989 tour and Reputation tour stage. I personally don't think that this was ever going to happen. I do think it was very early on designed for the stage. But we have this, what I think is definitely more what it would have been like, the Love Heart stage for Loverfest. She was putting Easter eggs all through me, and she had said that when Loverfest was coming out, that we hadn't found all of the Easter eggs because some of them were going to be answered in Loverfest. So I think that it's probably a good assumption to make that that Love Heart stage in Me was going to be used in Loverfest and things like that. You know, other elements like that. I think it's probably a good assumption to make that some of the And Friends would have included some of the people that she collaborated with for not only the Me music video, but the rest of the album. So having the Chicks, Brendan Urie, I feel like they definitely would have been performing with Loverfest. Whether they would be performing on those songs or not, I don't know. But certainly I feel like they would have been understandable characters to have be the And Friends, if you know what I mean. And the other thing that got leaked was that the Inner Circle, Taylor's Inner Circle, had leaked that in March 2020, 32 songs had been rehearsed ahead of Loverfest. Now, I don't necessarily imagine that that means that the set list was going to be 32 songs long. I definitely don't think that was the case. I definitely imagine that some of those songs probably would have been practiced in transitionary things, kind of like on the Eras tour, you know, the songs between Lover and Fearless, for example, like those kinds of things. I'm sure that obviously there's not 32 songs on Lover, first of all. So I do think that it was kind of going to be a bit more loosey-goosey. I also think that there's a good chance that a lot of the songs were practiced just in case the setlist got changed. Let's just say, for the sake of things, 18 songs, and in each location maybe there was going to be a fun extra song that was specific just to that location. That's kind of what I get from it. I personally don't think that 32 songs was ever going to be the set list length, but let me know in the comments what you guys think. So that is Loverfest as far as we know it. The festival that never was, kind of like Fire Festival. But you know, thankfully the plug was pulled on this festival before 5,000 geometric tents ended up on the beaches of the Bahamas. I really would love to have known more about this. I think that this is one of those things that I have like kind of burning questions for Taylor about. She's very forthcoming with a lot of information, but if I was to sit in a room with her and ask one question, I certainly would be asking about Loverfest. Maybe I would be asking who the And Friends are and what capacity the And Friends were. A lot of people were worried that it was going to be less Taylor focused, and if you're just wanting to see Taylor, it's going to suck if you've got quite a number of artists that you're paying, you know, you're paying a lot of money to go to this festival and you're really only there for Taylor, and well, what are you going to do in the acts beforehand? Huh? You can't spend so long in the bathroom. For our Loverfest, like I mentioned before, I think it is beneficial to us to try and make this as simple as possible for this video. So I will be making an 18 song length set list, just like all of our previous ones, because that roughly makes around an hour and a half of music. Of course, there would be shortened songs, lengthened songs, interludes and things like that that we would have to be playing around with, but that's just kind of something to consider along the way. And as far as the other rules that we'll be applying to this set list, we're going to be having the same percentage of lover songs versus non-lover songs on this set list as the other ones, so around 60 to 70%. It's going to be around 55% singles versus non-singles. Any songs from a previous album featured on this set list are going to be singles. It's the highest likelihood of them being enjoyed, I would say, for passers-by. The first 5 songs on the album will be included just like they have been on every tour, so you've already got 5 out of 18 locked in there. And then 4 or 5 slower songs to pad out the high intensity songs that we have in the set list. Okay, so I think it's going to be feeling a little bit familiar with this Loverfest set list, but I do think we have to keep in mind the entire time that we do this, that this is going to be performed largely on a festival stage. Predominantly, the shows that we're going to be showcasing Lover were festival stages, and we kind of know what all of them look like. They're all kind of the same rectangle shape overall, so it makes sense that we're not going to be doing too many things with staging in terms of large structures or things like that, or temporary structures. I think it's likely going to be quite bare bones. There's going to be some things rolled in, but I think we just have to keep expectations lower for the Taylor Swift Loverfest and Friends shows. I certainly think that there would be much more of an extravagant show. But yeah, I personally would love to know what you guys think it would have looked like as we kind of go through this. So for the inspiration for which songs, before we get started, I will say that we've got a few inspirations. We're obviously going to be looking at the Eras Tour. We've been using the Eras Tour as kind of our basis for a lot of these tours. But for this one in particular, we do have additional things to look at for inspiration, namely the NPR Tiny Desk and the City of Lover show. I think that they were really good for especially deciding which non-single songs were going to be put on there and the songs from other albums that were going to be featured on this set list. So without much further ado, let me show you my Loverfest set list. Without a doubt, this show will start with me. Ooh, 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 ooh.
I promise that you'll never find another like me.
Yeah, we're starting with Me. I don't think there's any reality where this song was not the first song on this set list. Whenever she would perform it at awards shows or things like that, Me was almost always either the first song or the main song that was played. It's the first single that she came out with on this album. It was the first single that she owned. It's quite exciting. Me is very special to Taylor. As discussed in my Me video, this song has kind of gone through a bit of a rough time. It's definitely had some heavy criticism, but I think for a festival, and I thought for the Eras Tour this too, that Me definitely is an important song to be putting on this set list. It is so hype, it is so fun, and it doesn't matter if it's not so deep, not so meaningful. It doesn't have to be. We're having a fun and goofy time at Loverfest, aren't we? And so I think Me's the perfect spot here for our number one entry. Imagine hearing as you start. I just think like, come on guys, of course this is first. You know, yes, I do feel like I am a little bit biased toward this song because I've made that video, but I just think it makes the most sense. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I also think that I was trying to lean away from doing something like Miss Americana or Cruel Summer because if I'm being completely honest with you, Miss Americana being the first song on the Eras Tour is a surprise to me because I don't think, well, in the performances of Lover, Miss Americana is not there most of the time. Most of the time she's performing things from Lover, it's like she forgot she wrote that song. I forgot that you existed. And I thought that it would kill me, but it didn't. That's how she feels about Miss Americana. Yeah, personally, I don't think that that would have been even in consideration. Although, I do think that a lot of the things that we got on the Lover set list of the Eras Tour were probably pulled from Loverfest, so that's something to consider. As far as costuming goes, I think that she would be wearing that band jacket like she wears in the music video, except I do think that it would be bedazzled and probably not green or pink. It might be rainbow like she had performed Me. There was that costume that she wore that was one shoulder and kind of fringy and glittery. I kind of think that it would be in that vein, and she'd also wear a rainbow bodysuit to match that. Kind of let's imagine the Reputation tour where she had the jacket on and the dress thing underneath in Don't Blame Me, and it's more or less the same vibe, but just, yeah, an outer layer. I think that she would wear it just for Me though, and then take it off for our next song. For our next song, we have You Need to Calm Down. As our second single on this album, I did think that it made the most sense for it to go here and be honored in this way. I also think that it has kind of a perfect representation of what the album kind of is about. You know, she wanted to have lots of different expressions of love itself, a love letter to love. And I think that this like let's not judge people for loving who they love conversation is a really good moment to have here. My main goal with these set lists, I'm not sure if I've even mentioned this before, was to have the first kind of 5 songs of this tour roughly be hype up songs. A lot of them are going to be singles in this section, whether they're from the album that the tour is for or singles from previous albums. It's definitely meant to get the crowd going, get them engaged early, and then we can have a mini wind down, then up again, mini wind down, up again, and then up to the end. Kind of that's the vibe of a tour generally. And certainly on this tour, I felt like You Need to Calm Down being second here is a really good spot for it. And it also perfectly fits with the next few songs that we were going to do. That was kind of my vibe. Sonically, I think certainly being toward the beginning made sense for You Need to Calm Down. Up next, we have our first mashup. And yes, you will not be able to pry this mashup from my cold dead hands. Let me tell you, our mashup here is, can you guess? Style and Love Story. Initially, I'd had actually separated these two and had them individually in my set list, but then I wanted to move in another song and I thought, I think I just need to make a mashup here. And I think that it was kind of a good time to have a mashup for these songs because you're honoring them, but you're also not spending too much time on them. I think that with this set list in particular, we really need to have high impact popular songs of Taylor's discography to keep the people interested that are not here just for Taylor. Like if we're thinking about Taylor headlining at Glastonbury, we have to consider that a lot of these people have come here for other artists. Some of these people come for Paul McCartney, some of these people come for Kendrick Lamar. We need to get them to come to Taylor as well. And I think that Style and Love Story are crowd pleasers. Style certainly thematically fits really well in this set list. Love Story was a no-brainer. Love Story's been on every set list. I've mentioned this in every video. So there was no way that Love Story was ever going to be not on this set list, but I do think that it having kind of such a large spot, probably less likely, just because I think she would really want to showcase Lover. There are a lot of matching sounds between You Need to Calm Down and Style as well, so I thought that they made a really good transition between the two. So I just think that these songs together would be really good to have on if there's casual listeners in the audience and they just want to jump around and have fun, you know? Next up, I have a song that I think potentially people might be wanting to swap out, but I think that there's no way that this song's not included. I would love to hear what you all think in the comments about this. Our 4th song on this set list is Paper Rings. I think this song really represents Lover very well. It's personally one of my favorites, and I think that the hype that this song has and the silly goofiness has really lends itself well to a festival. You don't need to hear all the lyrics, you don't need to be in touch with it in that kind of way. You just need to have the vibe, and I think that Paper Rings' vibe is just so well suited to this scenario. Everyone in the audience, I like shiny things, but I marry you with paper rings, That's right. There's no way that's not on there. Did you hear me? Oh my god. Yeah, so definitely Paper Rings for me. I do think that she would play this on acoustic guitar. The first 3 and mashup included songs are more like showstopper songs, if you know what I mean. And then Paper Rings is keeping the vibe and then playing with acoustics. And then I also think that having it be on the acoustic guitar will lend itself well to flow into our next song, which is Lover. Yes, like I said, still playing the acoustic guitar. It's the first of our kind of slower songs, but I think that it's one that's really easy to sing, which is obviously something that's important for a festival. It's also a single, which means that of course it was going to be on there, and it's in our top 5, so of course it was going to be on there. But I think here is a really good spot to put it because it's like a slight wind down, but like we're still having fun. And I think Lover, we're still having fun. Next up, we have a victim of the Torture Post Department era being added to the Eras tour, and that is The Archer. I also felt like The Archer just had to be on this set list. It's our track 5. There was no way it wasn't going to be included in terms of our rules that we normally set for these set list videos. I also think that with Lover being the song that it transitioned from, it just makes sense. I can really easily see this being performed right after. I feel like it would kind of be like the Eras tour where she's kind of alone on the stage. That's kind of my vibe that I'm thinking for this song. She feels a bit more alone. I do think that this song probably would be shortened shortened given the kind of verse 1 chorus, bridge chorus configuration. Not to do a disservice to the Archer, but I think that the bridge and kind of ending of the Archer is kind of a real highlight for me. And I think that she would really play into that and then go off to do a very quick costume change maybe. Like maybe she throws something on top of the bodysuit or something like that for our next few songs. Our next song up we have is Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince. Yeah, we were not letting go of that song. I might not think that it was right for us to use at the beginning of the tour with me in consideration, but I do definitely think it needed to be on the set list. There was no way I was not putting Miss Americana on there. It's definitely one of my favorite songs, so maybe I'm a bit biased towards it. But certainly the Eras tour is a big inspiration for putting this on because it was honored so much by being the first song of the whole tour. So she obviously loves it in some capacity. Like Lover, I think that it is kind of another one of those perfect transition songs between slower to higher impact songs. It can be made really big, and I think that she would make it really big, transitioning from the driving beat of The Archer. So even though this song hasn't necessarily been on many performances of Lover, you know, we don't have a lot of information to go off of for this era because of COVID, so we never really know for sure if, you know, maybe she had a plan to have this performed later on in a show. We'll never know. That's something to consider. I think there's no way that Miss Americana wasn't going to be performed here, personally. Then next up we have I Knew You Were Trouble, which might be a little bit of a random moment on Red for me, but because she played this on the City of Lover tour, I did think it probably must lend itself pretty well to the Lover era. I do think that with the songs that I've chosen it to be played with in particular, narratively it makes a lot of sense to put here. Even though, like, it's obviously popular for a reason and I do like this song a lot, there is an element of it being overplayed, and then of course the memification of this song happening with the goat that has kind of put this sour taste in my mouth about this song. But I do think it's a good song again for the people that are just kind of passing by and listening. They go, oh, yeah, I know that song. Oh yeah, I can get down to I Knew You Were Trouble. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a crowd pleaser, and I do think that maybe if I didn't put this song on, maybe I would have put We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together. I do think that we need a Red song on the set list. She loves Red. There's absolutely no way we weren't going to get a Red song on there. Next up we have Blank Space. Again, another song that I don't think there's any way that this wouldn't have been included. It just felt wrong not to have this on here. We've got two songs in a row that are kind of pulling those people back in that might be straying because they don't know those Lover songs. Narratively, it makes sense to have with this tour. And then what I think is kind of another perfect transition moment is I Forgot That You Existed. Yes, our track 1 is finally appearing. There was a temptation for me to put this as the first song, but it's not really hype enough to put as a first song. It certainly is on the album, but in terms of like opening up a festival, like I just can't see this song being the one where like Ready For It really makes sense on the Reputation tour, for example. Track 1s tend to be my favorite songs, and I certainly love this song very much. I feel like the line of songs that we've just had, I Knew You Were Trouble, Blank Space, and Now I Forgot That You Existed, kind of feels a little bit like a sort of post-breakup clarity song, for lack of a better term. Like she's like, oh, I'm so happy now. I forgot that you existed. I've moved on now. Now I have something fun and happy and beautiful. I don't actually need to worry anymore about the fact that you were trouble or the fact that I'm made to be seen like some kind of menace because of who you made me. Kind of vibe. You know what I'm saying? And then another crowd pleaser moment. I don't know if this is a crowd pleaser moment. It certainly is now. It's certainly a throwback. Next, we're going to be experiencing the deliciousness that is Delicate. Yup. Our first nod back to the album that was directly preceding Lover, which is Reputation, of course. Delicate feels very much like it could have been put on Lover, in my opinion. And in saying that, I do have the opinion that Reputation and Lover, like twin albums, sonically they sound extremely similar. And I think that a lot of the reason that they are not considered to be so similar is because visually they're extremely different. I definitely think that it makes sense having Delicate here. Thinking about what Reputation songs I was going to put on this set list, I didn't think that songs like Ready For It or Look What You Made Me Do made sense because they're kind of more scathing and like harsh songs in a way, and Lover, certainly on a festival sense, I feel like needs to be more fun, a bit goofy. Delicate is quite vulnerable of a song. It's our track 5 on Reputation. I do think that vulnerability lends itself really well to Lover because Lover, as an album, is very insecure and vulnerable. And then next up we have another pairing that that I think makes a lot of sense, which is going from Delicate now to Cornelia Street. I love this song, and like funnily enough, it was because of the City of Lover performance of Cornelia Street that I really fell in love with this song, so it feels kind of a bit full circle for me to have it on here. But there was no way that this song wasn't going to be on my set list, if I can be completely upfront and honest with you. I'm sure I'm not in the minority of people being wowed by that City of Lover performance and giving kind of a new appreciation of this song. Overall, to me, Lover is an album that is very highly produced in a way that it sometimes makes some of the songs not so approachable. So hearing those stripped back versions of the songs, me in particular was a great one for that, definitely gives you a new appreciation of the song. And Cornelia Street was really that for me. When I first heard the song, I was like, okay, slay. And then when I heard the City of Lover song, I was like, I think every single person needs to hear this song and know how good it is. But yeah, it was obviously a very important song to Taylor, so I think it makes sense that it would go here. I think it would have more or less the same production, elevated for Festival. You get me. So we're not done with Reputation because our next song up is Getaway Car. I'm almost certain after what I said about Delicate, you could see Getaway Car was kind of coming as well. It feels like a bit of a no-brainer also because of who Getaway Car is about and it like describing the beginning of this relationship that is so prevalent on the Lover album. I do think that it would be honored in this way. And again, Getaway Car is such a popular song, certainly more popular than Delicate, I would have said, at least at the time. Maybe it's different now after the Eras tour, but certainly Getaway Car was a really popular song at that point. And it just felt kind of like a good song again as a kind of transition song. I would say that this song is sort of more mid-tempo, but like exciting. So I do think it's a good song between kind of slower songs and higher tempo songs. So right after that we have another song that was elevated by the City of Lover performance, to me at least, and that is Death by a Thousand Cuts. This song is really important in the story of Lover overall. I think it also would be fun to kind of nod to the lore that we found out when she was promoting Lover, that Death by a Thousand Cuts was inspired by a movie that was inspired by her own song, Clean. So I think that it would be fun if she added elements of Clean to the production of this song, just as a kind of a nod. For the people that know, they know. For the other people, they just hear another song that maybe sounds a little bit familiar to them. Coming to the sort of low point before the end of the show, and low point I definitely don't mean like switch off zone, I mean slower songs, and that is going to be Daylight. I thought that Daylight was a really good song to put here, especially after what we have just listened to. It was featured on the City of Lover show, so I definitely feel like it is a song that she would have been considering for this. I was kind of tossing up between Afterglow and Daylight, and ultimately I think Daylight fits this spot a bit better than Afterglow. I would certainly think that Daylight is a more popular song compared to Afterglow, so I mean, let me know in the comments what you think might be better suited here. Personally, I think it's Daylight. And yes, like I said, this is like kind of the last point of the show that we're going to be hearing a slower or sadder song. We're going to be ramping it up from here. And so the beginning of our sort of ramp up section, I want to finally have our surprise song. Yeah, I didn't forget about her. I think that it would be fun at every show. There's only 17 shows, so it doesn't seem so much like a big task. I do think that it would be fun for Taylor to perform a song that was most popular or most listened to either from Lover or from a previous album. So like, let's say the people of Atlanta, they go crazy for Sparks Fly. So she's going to play Sparks Fly here. I just think that that would be so fun. She's going to all these places, some of these places that she would have been going for the first time. There's a lot of songs that, and a lot of albums, you know, promoted much more in certain countries and not so promoted in other countries, you know. So it would be kind of a good nod to say like, yeah, I see what you're all listening to and I want to kind of give you something that I think you guys would really like. Sort of like she did on the Speak Now tour, except she was doing that with local artists. She would perform a song of a local artist, but now she's going to be doing this with her own discography. Alternatively, she could be playing other songs from Lover that she hasn't got to play yet, but I do think that it would be more beneficial to play a more popular song here because we otherwise would be playing, spoilers, like 5 Lover songs in a row. And if you're one of those people that's just walking past and is listening but isn't super listening, it would be good for her to play a song that I think the crowd would love. Our second to last song here, we finally have it, The Man. Yeah, I nearly had The Man and You Need to Calm Down back to back again. I do like the combo, but it's definitely very Eras tour. And I did do it on my Folkmore tour, but I don't know that I would do it on my Loverfest tour. I do think that this song is a big song song and a fun song. And I definitely think that it is a really good spot for it to be kind of ramp up. But I do think alternatively, I could have probably put this song earlier on in the set list and had other hits be performed down this end of the set list. Like, let's say, for example, we could move around Style and Love Story, move that to this spot and move The Man up into the kind of front half of the set list. A little bit vulnerably, I wasn't sure about what to do with sort of this end part of the tour because I feel like there's a lot of options that we have for a festival. Personally, my reasoning for putting this here was, other than it being like a great song to put here, another single, it makes a lot of sense. I also didn't want it to be like the Eras tour. So that was kind of a bit more of my inspiration for this, as I wanted to challenge myself a little bit to do something different that wasn't so hardcore leaning on the Eras tour. And then finally, of course, we have, I would argue, probably the most popular song on Lover that's not a single, or it is a single now, blah, 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 blah. That is Cruel Summer. Now, at the time of Lover being promoted, Cruel Summer was not a single. However, I think that if Lover had had its full course of running its promotional period, I definitely think that Cruel Summer would have been made a single. And of course, it was honored on the Eras tour by being made a single then to celebrate it being the start of the Eras tour. That makes sense to me. She loved this song so much. We loved this song so much. I think it makes sense to have it at the end of the tour because obviously it was very popular, and normally at the end of tours the most popular kind of song ends up being kind of the end of a tour to be like a bit of a thank you and here's the most fun song, here's the one you've all been waiting for kind of thing. It passes the wave off test that I've mentioned before. In a perfect world, I think it would have been a single and with a film clip earlier on. That is my Loverfest set list. I'd love to know what you all think. I'd love to know whether you all agree with me, certainly about the songs, and I would love to hear what positions you would put things in if you would change anything. I honestly think that Taylor had a little bit of a thank you Jesus, thank you Jesus, thank you Jesus moment that COVID happened, because I do think, like, if I can be completely honest, that the Loverfest tour was just a little bit too ambitious for her at the time, and I do think that this honestly could have been a career-ending kerfuffle. So in a way, she's probably like, thank God COVID happened and put a stop to it, because it was kind of growing seemingly a little too far out of the reach of what was possible.
When I pulled the sandwich out, I saw the face of God.
Grilled Jesus, please let us win our first football game. And in return, cheesy Lord, I'll make sure we honor you this week in Glee Club.
You know, who knows? It might have all been thrown together and it might have all been amazing. I don't know the timeline typically of how things are planned for a Taylor Swift tour. But just based on like what we know, I personally just don't think that it was at any point at the point of it being very cohesive and understandable. Certainly it had a terrible marketing strategy in terms of feeding information to fans and at least making some things understandable to them when they were buying tickets. So that's just my 2 cents. Like, no wonder she brought us the greatest album of all time as a sorry. Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus. Putting a stop to Lover. Thank you for not ending my career. I'm going to give you the greatest album of all time, Folklore. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Jesus. Did Taylor start COVID-19 to save her career?